Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary Barfield. I'm a homeschooling mom to a rising kindergartner and second grader, and we are presently moving into our second year of homeschooling. So that means we just finished up our first year officially of being full-time homeschoolers. And I think because we are so new into the homeschooling journey, I get a lot of questions from other parents, specifically moms, in my comments, in my Instagram DMs, as well as I've even gotten emails from other moms who are interested in homeschooling. But the big two questions I get from them is, why did we choose to homeschool? I think that's very big for people to have conviction around homeschooling, knowing your why. But then they also ask, how did we transition into homeschooling? Because my oldest daughter originally went to a charter school for kindergarten. So she had a full year of traditional schooling under her belt. So how do we transition into homeschooling life? So I think those two questions are definitely 2 videos worth of information in me talking, because I'm pretty chatty. So this video is going to be our why. I'm going to tell you guys all about why we decided to homeschool, what spurred us to make the change. And the second video that'll come out after this will be the how we do it, and any advice I would give somebody going through the process again, just kind of learning from what I did and maybe what I didn't, and what I would recommend to others to make it a little bit of a smoother transition. So before I jump into talking about our whys behind why we decided to start homeschooling, I wanted to preface this video with the fact that you're here either because you homeschool or you're really interested in homeschooling your kiddos, which means we all have the same ultimate goal: to educate our children the best way possible, to provide them a great environment to learn, grow up, and be successful. And because ultimately we love our children with all of our hearts. Now, that doesn't mean that our reasons might be completely different for homeschooling, right? And that's okay. My reasons might not resonate with you, or your reasons might not resonate with me if we were talking about it, but that's okay, because we ultimately all have the same goal. So basically, all I want to say is just be kind in the comments, no negativity here. I want this to be a positive space around homeschooling. And if I don't resonate with you, it's okay. You can swipe on by. It won't hurt my feelings, I promise. Now, getting into the whys behind homeschooling. So I have kind of 2 buckets. I have the why we decided to start homeschooling, and those reasons and those whys are still true to this day. But then I have a few new added whys behind why we continue to homeschool. The reasons we chose to homeschool are very different from why we continue to homeschool, because there are so many positive, wonderful things that I didn't even think about before delving into homeschooling that have come about through the entire journey and process of actually homeschooling. So I'll share my why we started, and then I'll share why we continue to homeschool this following year and every year for the foreseeable future. So since my oldest daughter had the experience of going to a charter school for her kindergarten year, that actually spurred some of the reasons why we decided to homeschool. My youngest, who's about to be 5 in August, she's never been in a traditional school setting. She did a preschool, like mommy's morning out program for 3 mornings a week at one point when she was 3 years old, but that's about as close as she's gotten to any kind of experience with a traditional school. So most of my experience with schooling comes from my oldest daughter with a traditional school setting. So I'll reference her a lot in this video, but everything I say about my whys drills down to both my children. So I think for us, the reason we decided to homeschool, it wasn't any one big variable or event or thing. It was a culmination of multiple variables that just kind of came together. And then finally there was one incident, I think, that was like the tipping point that totally put us in the bucket of we're going to homeschool for our oldest daughter's first grade year and our youngest daughter's pre-K year. So starting with my daughter's experience at charter school. So there was an incident towards the end of the year, not the end of the year, but towards the end of the year, where there was a safety issue at our school. There was a code yellow, which means it's not a code red. And I don't know what words YouTube flags, so I'm going to kind of speak cryptically, but I think you know what I'm talking about. There was a code yellow, which means that a person was trying to get into the building but wasn't able to get in. They weren't able to breach the building, but they were still on premise trying to do something nefarious with the school, the kids, etc. Now, my husband and I were working remote at home, had no idea this was going on. We got a text an hour later after the situation had been diffused, just keeping us abreast of the situation that there had been a code yellow. Somebody tried to get into the building. The police were called. Nothing negative came out of it. The person was arrested. And that we should basically go about our day. It was a very basic text message that they obviously blasted everybody. And I understand they've got to inform how many parents of what's going on. I get it. Text message is probably the easiest. I'm not faulting them for that, but the reality of it hit me like my throat dropped into my stomach. And I was just sitting there going, if this had been a true code red, and I was just sitting here sending emails, and I had no idea my daughter would be in that kind of situation where they could be hurt or worse. And I had no control over the situation. I understand that kind of thing could happen when I'm taking my kids to the grocery store, but in all reality, I'm going to protect my children differently than anybody else would in that kind of life or death situation. I would give my life for my children. I'm not saying her teacher wouldn't have, because her teacher was a great teacher, but she is one of 25 children that she was responsible for, 25, 5, and 6 years old. She would not be able to protect my child the way that I would, just based on sheer numbers, not even will and wanting to take care of the kids. So safety is a really, really big reason as to why we homeschool. Another thing that was really frustrating is that we had a huge lack of communication with the teachers and the administration. It was, again, not the teacher's fault. She's got 25 sets of parents that she is trying to communicate with and talk to about their kids. It's a sheer numbers game. So it's just tough for her to be one-on-one with us all the time. But the fact that there was a miscommunication to the administration about my daughter having some unexcused absences because we went down to Florida to visit my dad. We even did an educational visit to the aquarium and some other things, and we did a project on it. We did all 40 worksheets that our teacher required us to do while we were gone for the week. 40 worksheets on our Florida vacation. We completed them all and turned everything in. The teacher was so happy with all the work she had done. She got extra credit. It was great. But then the administration, 2 days before her kindergarten graduation, emails me, calls me, texts me, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Is something wrong? Your daughter has 9 absences, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here going, okay, but when your handbook says 10 absences before any kind of legal action is taken against the parents, because they'll call like CPS and do stuff if you're truant, like you don't show up when you're supposed to. And number 2, I cleared this with the teacher. I have receipts for it. And then they were like, well, you need to clear it with us first, and and these are unexcused. And I'm like, okay, but what is is my child not going to graduate? Are they not going to walk at the kindergarten graduation? Like, what are we talking about here? This is 2 days before graduation. Well, then I at that point, I was like, this is ridiculous. I've had enough. I pull up our general statutes for our state, and I say compulsory age in our state is not required until 7 years of age. My child is 5.5. And she's at your school, and I understand we have to follow your rules, but even your handbook says that legal action would not be taken until 10 absences. My kid has 9, so what are we quibbling about here? And they were like, well, we'll approve it back rate, approve it now, but next time, you have to talk to us first. And I just sat back, and I'm just like, this is like the most frustrating thing. This is my child, not the school's child. I just sat back and I thought about the whole situation. I'm sitting here going, why am I fighting with somebody else who isn't my husband? The only people that should worry about where my kids are and what they're doing is me and my husband. About my child going to Florida to visit her grandfather, and then also go on educational visits where she learned all about marine life. It was like a epiphany for me. And I'm sitting here going, I need to be in charge of my kids' education. I need to be in charge of my kids' schedule, and I should not have to answer to anybody else about my child. So that was another big one, the communication, and then the back and forth and the weirdness about the absences and just, etc. So another thing you can probably tell from all the things that I'm talking about is my kid was just a number in that school. It's not because my teacher didn't care about her. It's because just the way the system is structured, she's not going to get one-on-one customized attention. So I didn't really like that, especially when she's just this tiny little kid. I got to tell you, the first week dropping her off at school, the first couple weeks, frankly, it was tough. Like everything in my heart was saying, do not let your child go into that building. She should be at home with you, because I think she's this big kid that's growing up so much, but then she hops out of my car and starts walking down the sidewalk to the front entrance with all the other kids that are in middle school and elementary school. And I'm talking about, she's next to like a 5th grader. She's this tiny, itty, little bitty thing. And I'm just sitting there, there's something innately in my heart calling to me saying that you should not let her go. She should be home with you. So that there was like a maternal instinct, I guess, pulling me towards it, which I can't really quantify, or it's not tangible, so I can't really explain it in full. But I think if you have been in that same experience, you understand what I'm saying. So that was a big reason that I wanted to keep her home and do homeschooling too. Another thing, she would come home exhausted from school. I mean, she was there for 8 hours a day, and then having to sit in the car to and from. We'd have to get there super early. She'd have to go to bed super late. She was always she could never catch up with her sleep. And then having to sit there and just deal with academics for 8 hours a day, she would pass out as soon as her head hit that car seat in my back of my car. But to that same point, we did not get a lot of time with my daughter. By the time we got her home, fed, showered, we maybe had 30 minutes with her before she had to go to bed, because she had to go to bed early because she had to wake up so early to get to school. And so I realized at a certain point, I was maybe getting 5 hours of time with my oldest daughter, and that was not enough time. It also made me realize that I was no longer the most influential person in her life because I wasn't with her the most. Her teachers were with her the most. They were the most influential people for her. And I'm not saying teachers are bad people, but like, I want to be the most influential. I want my husband to be the most influential person in her life. And I think that's the way it should be as a family, to instill the values, the morals, and just the love that we have for our children in them 24/7. And you can't do that if your kid's at school. So that was another big reason that we wanted to start homeschooling. And last but not least, concern over what was being taught and if it was being taught at the appropriate age level. Now, my kid was in kindergarten, so, I mean, they were just going over shapes, colors, and your basic math stuff, right? But I was hearing from older parents at the school about some concerns about some certain topics and different things. And it wasn't just one topic, it was about a bunch of things. And if it was the right time, and they were, questioning it. It was nothing serious, right? But it was just these conversations that I was starting to have with some of the older moms. And I was hearing it, and I was sitting there going, I don't want to have to worry about this. I don't want to have to worry about if my child's being told biased information more specifically too. That's a big one. So biased or not the right maturity level, or untrue information. Because at the end of the day, the way that I am running our school is I'm going to give them all the facts. I'm going to be as neutral as possible, give them the information, and then I want them to come to their own conclusion about how to think about this topic that we're talking about, whatever the topic is, right? I want them to be critical thinkers. And I think at school, it's tougher to create critical thinkers, again, because of sheer numbers. The teacher is having to calm down a whole class of 20 to 25 kids, and then they're just having to give the information, and they can't work one-on-one with people. They have to follow the specific curriculum, the common standards, etc. I mean, they're working to a standard, they're working to a number. That doesn't really foster an environment for critical thinking and delving into people's interests and strengths. And then also understanding what their weaknesses are and trying to help fill those gaps. It just doesn't create an environment for that. So that's another reason. Just the timing of including information and making sure we provide factual information and then letting them come to their own conclusions. That was a big thing that I wanted for my kiddos that I knew would be tough for them to get at any school. So to that same point, let's talk about why we continue to homeschool. Something I really didn't think about was individualized education. I knew that I didn't like the fact that I felt like my kid was a number, but I didn't really know what that meant on the flip side, the positive side. What is the alternative to being, just a number? It's having a fully customized education for your child that really hones into their strengths, that drills into their interests, and also helps support their weaknesses, where, areas of opportunity, as we like to call it, because we don't want to call it weakness. It makes it a little negative. Areas of opportunity. So for example, with that, my oldest, she had 4s the first 2 quarters in math at her old school. Her 3rd quarter, she got a 3. And then her 4th quarter, she got a 2. And I didn't hear anything from the teacher about this. And I was like, what is going on? I reached out, we set up a meeting, but she basically said that she had given her and a bunch of other kids 0s on their last math test because they didn't put their names on them. And I'm saying that, I'm like, I get it, right? It's your classroom, your rules. You want to run it like that. That's cool. But in my head, all I could think is, my kid is 5.5 years old. I have to remind her to put her underwear on sometimes in the morning. And you're trying to tell me that you gave her a 0 on a test, which is so influential on her grade. But also, I realized at that point, she was having some struggles in math and she wasn't getting the help she needed. So I think the individualized education piece comes in here. I was able to say, okay, let's stop. We're seeing some struggles here. Let's try a new curriculum. Let's maybe just do some game schooling this week to play some like hands-on games to help with your math competencies. We were able to get her to a place now where she likes math. She's doing well in it, and she's almost caught up. We're almost done with our first grade math, and I think we'll be able to complete it before next year she goes into second grade. But that's not the point. The point is that I saw that my kid was having a problem with math, and we started a program this past year, and I thought it would work for her. It didn't. That was okay, because I was able to customize her education and go with a completely different math program that did connect with her and that made her love math. I think if she had stayed in charter school or regular school, traditional school, I think that she would have struggled severely with math, and it would have just kept getting worse because they would have kept passing her along to the next teacher. And I think that we would have been in a bad spot with math. Personally, that's just my opinion. I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't see the future, but that is my opinion based on what I've experienced this year teaching her. To that same point, we have now tons of flexibility and freedom to pursue our interests. We're not just doing the standard, reading, writing, arithmetic. I mean, we're doing that, but my daughter, my oldest, loves to sew. She loves to create. She loves to paint watercolors. So we're really delving into that to the point where I might make a whole thing about it for Fun Fridays this coming year. And that can be her time to do handcrafts, basically. My youngest wants to learn how to crochet now. So we're going to start pursuing that interest. I wouldn't have that time with my kiddos if they were in a traditional school to follow those interests. And who knows what will come of that as they get older, and what confidence that brings them too. Like really being able to delve into something you like, but something you're good at, that's a huge confidence builder. And especially with young girls, you want to give them every chance to build their confidence that you can. So next reason that we are going to continue homeschooling, we don't have to wake up super duper early, go to bed super duper early as well, and be stressed and exhausted because we're running ragged because we got to make sure the kids get enough sleep, and then I'm waking them up before the sun rises to get them to school. Then we're doing the hustle and bustle. We don't have to do all that anymore. And I knew that was something that I didn't like about regular school, but I just was like, that's just a part of life, hustle bustle, right? Well, until you get out of the hustle bustle, and I mean after a couple months and you settle into it and you're like, this is your new norm, you never want to go back to that, man. Oh, our schedule is our own. I'm not having to rush to be somewhere unless I want to be there, unless we're going on a field trip to the zoo, or we're going to a cool regenerative farm, or we're going to go learn about milking cows at the local university here. Like, we don't have to do anything that we do not want to, which one, reduces our stress. Two, all of us are getting such better sleep. Mentally, that's so much better for us. Physically, that's so much better for us. So that is another reason why we will continue to homeschool. So last 2 points, we are only doing school for about 2 to 3 hours a day. That's all you need at this age. Well, and I say this age, I mean, I'm not saying I'm doing 3 hours specifically with each kid. We have our individual subjects, but in total we do school, like real sit down school for 2 to 3 hours. Now, does that mean we stop learning after that? Absolutely not. We are doing so much learning through other activities, like the handcrafts and things. I wasn't considering that in the 2 to 3 hours that we're doing school. So like we're doing so much more, and we are able to do more hands-on activities than we would if we were in school. And honestly, my kids are way more socialized now than they ever were at regular school. Prime example, my oldest, she would get yelled at because she would finish her work and then start talking to her friend. Her friend wasn't done with her work. So obviously that was distracting. So the teacher would be like, stop talking. But she would come home and tell me this all the time. And I'm like, when do you socialize with your friends? Because they really don't. The only time they would do it is 20 minutes at recess. And that included the 5-minute walk to and from the jungle gym. And then they got 20 minutes for lunch. But because they only had 20 minutes for lunch, they were scarfing food, or they were talking with their friends and then coming home with full lunch bags. They had to pick between basically eating or creating social relationships with their friends. So when people come to me and they're like, aren't you worried about socialization? I'm like, I was worried about socialization in school, y'all. We have soccer, we have ninja practice, we go on field trips, we have our co-op group, we have our kids group, we have our current network, we have the people at golf club that we are a bit. Our kids are so socialized now to the point where I'm pretty sure my oldest is like trying to run for Congress next year. She goes and she's like, "Hi, I'm Mary," and then she just starts chit-chatting. It's funny because she's able to talk to adults. Before, she wasn't really good at that. Now she's able to talk to adults, teenagers. She's gentle with young babies. She has a wide array of relationships with people of different ages. Whereas if she was at school, she would only be with 5-year-olds or only be with 6-year-olds, which I think, yes, you need peer-to-peer relationships, but I think having the relationships both ways allows her to develop her social skills even more and become more dynamic in the way she's able to talk to people and provide more confidence to her. Now, on the other side with my youngest, she was my introvert. Like, I was actually kind of concerned. Like, you could tell when she was at her preschool program in the mornings, they would send photos to us. She was always in the teacher's lap or holding her or scared. Like, she was my nervous Nelly. She was afraid to leave me. I was actually slightly nervous that homeschooling would be a detriment to her because she would be with me then 24/7, with making her even more like, "Mom, I want mom. I don't want anybody else." Over this past year, she has blossomed. She has come into her own. She is so sociable. She's Charlie, man. She's like it gives me chills to think about it. And I think it's because we homeschooled that she is now this outgoing. I mean, she's still, don't get me wrong, when we walk into a new situation, she's kind of the person that walks in. She has a healthy amount of skepticism, and she kind of likes to take an observation of the situation. Then she's like, "I'm okay with this," and then she goes full Monty into it. So she was not like that before homeschooling, and I think homeschooling is the reason she was. I think if she had been put again into another classroom and told to sit still and be there and be with kids only your age, and I think she would have fallen apart. So again, don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you if that's absolutely accurate or not, or if that would have happened or not. And then lastly, just harping on a previous point, the reason we continue to homeschool is because I have seen such growth in my children's awareness of themselves, their intellectual knowledge, their ability to ask questions and become critical thinkers. That critical thinking piece, man, I'm telling you, she doesn't just regurgitate information to me. She asks about it. She's like, "Okay, so you said this, so why, blah, blah, blah." And then she has to process through it to this point where she gets to her conclusion, then she has it locked in her brain. And it's because she asked the questions. It's not because I was just throwing facts at her and just telling her this is what you need to believe or know or blah, blah, blah. It's because she is becoming a critical thinker and is engaging in the process with us. My youngest is doing the same thing too, just at a different level. But that's a huge, like, big thumbs up for me. But so that's pretty much it. I'm sure there's some other points, and I feel like they started bleeding together. I was going to try and do like a point 1, 2, 3, but then I'm like, they all kind of intertwine too. So this became a little bit more chatty and a little longer than I anticipated it to be. I'm so sorry. If you're still here with me, thank you so much. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you are new to my channel, definitely hit that subscribe button, because I'm going to be coming out with the second part of this video, the how to homeschool, how to transition into homeschooling. And hit that notification bell so you know when that video goes live. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.